Ryoichi Ikegami was born in Fukui, Japan, in 1944. His other main works include Iwao Boy, story by Kazuo Koike, also the author of Lone Wolf and Cub, Otokogumi, story by Tetsu Kariya, Otoko Ozora, story by Tetsu Kariya, and Nobunaga, story by Kazuya Kudo, the writer of Mai. Sometimes I feel that younger comic artists are imitating my style, but that's okay. What's most important is what kind of world you want to describe and what kind of story you want to draw. The story comes first, and then the art. If other artists think my style describes their world, they are welcome to imitate me. But a comic artist who doesn't develop his own world won't survive. Even when I was a kid, I liked realistic and dramatic drawings. When I was in junior high, I decided to be a comic artist. But my father was ill, and although I wanted to go to high school, I had to start working after I graduated from junior high. I went to work for a signboard painter in Osaka as a live-in employee. In those days, that was the only kind of job that was related to drawing. 4 other employees and myself shared a tiny room. They complained if I kept the lights on late at night, so I had to draw under the covers with a flashlight. I knew the only way to change my life was to become a professional comic artist. I loved my parents and wanted them to have a decent life. Since I didn't have an education, I could only make them happy by pursuing my dream. Of course, I loved manga. And even when I was drawing under the covers at night, I thought I was such a genius. I continued to send my work to different comic magazines. Finally, when I was 22, a rather serious comic I had created, named The Sense of Guilt, was accepted by the unique and progressive comic magazine, Garo. Shigeru Mizuki, a famous Japanese comic artist, saw my work in Garo and asked me to come to Tokyo and work as his assistant. He offered me a better salary than the sign shop, and I thought there would be more opportunity for me in Tokyo, so I accepted his offer. I came to Tokyo and started working as an assistant on Gegege no Kitaro, one of the best-selling manga series in the late 1960s in Japan. The story was about monsters, spirits, and mutants. I was a great fan of Yoshiharu Tsuge, an artist famous for his serious, metaphysical comics, respected among intellectuals in Japan. Tsuge often came to Mizuki's studio to help. Both of them taught me a lot. They introduced me to Goethe and Sartre and told me that I would never become a real comic artist until I had read such literature. That was the atmosphere of the time. I also began doing philosophical comics. After I had been in Tokyo for a couple of years, I began drawing for some of the popular boys' comic magazines. My first story was a 3-part Western. This work enabled me to quit my job as an assistant and become an independent, professional comic artist. I was 24. I have kind of a dark personality. For example, I couldn't decide what to do with a scene in which the hero is supposed to save a child. A part of me whispered, "How can he be so cool? Is he really capable of such heroics? He's really just an ordinary man." I would always reflect on my own character and the dark side of the hero I was creating. Consequently, all my characters tended to be somewhat indecisive and hesitant. Some of my editors told me that I had to have stronger heroes to be popular, but I just couldn't do it. Sometimes I tried imitating the stories of other comic artists, but that didn't work either. At the same time, however, I wanted to develop a more dynamic graphic style. People like me, sensitive, nervous, somber secretly, want to be strong. The tremendously muscled characters that I draw now project my own fantasies. I wanted to describe my hidden emotions, to draw distinctive and realistic pictures, to revitalize myself in creating powerful action scenes. But even though I had all these urgent desires, I ended up creating depressing stories that reflected the underside of human nature. I finally realized that I didn't have the talent to write for the entertainment comics and that I would have to rely on other people's stories. I am the total opposite of my comic characters. As a child, I was very weak, timid, and sickly. Even now, when my wife and I argue, I always lose laughter. Ikegami is asked, "Why did you decide to try to make it in the mass market for manga? You probably would have found people who really understood your world if you had drawn for a more targeted audience? To tell the truth, one reason was to make money. I wanted to take care of my parents. At first, I thought that after I made some money, then I would draw only what I wanted to. But then I got married and had children. Laughter. Ikegami's talent blossomed in his work with the comic writers Kazuo Koike and Tetsu Kariya. Koike and Ikegami's Iweo Boy began appearing in 1973 in Weekly Jendai, a general interest, not manga, magazine. Otoko Gumi with Kariya started in Shonen Sunday, the boys' manga magazine, in 1974. Both were phenomenal successes. I've always had an inferiority complex, especially about my lack of education. All the comic writers graduated from famous universities and are quite knowledgeable people. When we go out together, they discuss all kinds of things I know nothing about. I'm no match for them and respect them accordingly. Laughter. But actually, they have all helped me develop my talents to a greater degree. While I was working on Iwo Boy, I discovered that it's uninteresting to use a realistic graphic style on a realistic story. Realistic art is only interesting when it represents something that is unlikely to happen in the real world. Conversely, I found that a cartoony style works with a realistic story, such as a tragic love story. Otoko Gumi was the project that I really became the most excited about. It had such a powerful story that for the first time, I was able to overcome that dark side of myself. All those rough, strong men sacrificing themselves for the hero, Nagare. They were part of a world I really wanted to believe in. I was attracted to their single-minded dedication, and I wanted my drawings to match their seriousness and intensity. I enjoyed creating characters that were so devoted and loyal that they would even sacrifice their lives. Why? Because to me, they represented real beauty. I wanted to draw people who were beautiful, so beautiful, they would send chills up your spine.